Tessa Dooms on Power 98.7, 6 to 9 a.m.
The time is 6:22. You're on Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. We start off the morning with this border management story and looking at what are the numbers, what are the new figures around border management in the country, especially after this long weekend. We know a lot of travel happens. We have Dr. Michael Masiapato on the line with us this morning just to break this down. He's the Border Management Authority Commissioner. Dr. Masiapato, welcome this morning to Power Breakfast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tessa, and we appreciate this opportunity.
Great stuff. So over the weekend, of course, there would have been a lot of travel in and out of the country, and so this update from you is quite timely. What have our movements looked like across the various ports of entry? Looking at, we have about 71 ports of entry. I don't think we think about that number often enough. But what are the travelers looking like coming in and out of our country as we stand?
Yeah, so Tessa, this year we really had a very, hectic Easter period. You will note from the briefing we have done yesterday that we have been able, just for a period of 10 days, starting from the 14th of April until the 24th, we've been able to facilitate just over 1 million travelers across our ports of entry. And of course, that is an 8% increase compared to last year in the same 10-period bracket in as far as the Easter is concerned. So there has been a lot of planning that we had done. We knew that there is going to be a bit of demand, particularly because of some few factors. One of those is the fact that we were told that the ZCC Church in Moria is going to be open full time. I mean, since COVID, and on that basis, we knew there will be a lot of people from the continent coming down into the country for that. But secondly, in terms of Libombo, for instance, we knew that during December there was a strike and most of people did not manage to go to see their families. And this time around, we knew that they are going to come in numbers. So on that basis, it has been a very busy period, but we're able to manage as the plan has been put together.
So what are our ratios here between land and air travel? Do you have a sense of what those ratios look like when you look at that 1 million or so movements?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Remember, the OR Tambo International Airport always leads in as far as the numbers are concerned. And of course, on that basis, we had around, I think it's 13% increase compared to last year in terms of OR Tambo movement. That is over almost, I think, 250,000 or so that we had actually facilitated around OR Tambo, as it were. And the understanding for OR Tambo is purely on the basis of the demand, for South Africa from the international community as a tourism destination. We have seen a lot of people coming from Asia, for instance, coming through to South Africa, mainly from China as well as India, and most of those, they are coming through as tourists. So that is another thing that we've actually observed over and above the movement in terms of land. The only thing that we observed a bit different was the decrease in terms of the numbers in Cape Town, and we understood that it is primarily just because of the period. You'll remember last year, the Easter was around the end of March into early April, but this time around it was in the middle of April, as it were. So those are some of the factors that makes this work that we do very much complicated, because even when you do the planning, when you look at your historical empirical data and you do planning, when it comes to Easter, it is not a stable period because it is done in different dates, as it were, and that is why it becomes very much complicated for planning. But we do our best.
So it's not like for like, to the T, because Easter, of course, moves around. But I did want to move to the question of, just looking at corruption that might happen at the border. You were successful this week, or in this period, in nabbing about 6,000 people who were arrested at the borders for trying to enter without the proper documentation, and also officials that were arrested for trying to facilitate that kind of movement. Tell us about that, because a lot of South Africans would be interested to know that that is something that is actually happening.
Yeah, you see, Tessa, when you look at the numbers, and I want to actually emphasize that we are able to credit the deployment of the technology in terms of drones in particular, but also the body cams that we had actually bought via Armsco, including the push-to-talk devices that we had actually deployed in this period. So in terms of the numbers, you will be aware that we talk about a 61% increase. In other words, if you look at last year, we did around 3,800 just in a 10-day period around Easter. This time we did over 6,200. That is a demonstration that the deployment of technology had been very much helpful.
Sure.
And the most critical part of it is the fact that when you deploy technology, especially the drones, you are able to see the entire, ecosystem. You are able to see, all of the vulnerable segments, and you are able to identify where people are trying to cross. You are able to communicate with the border guards on the ground, and we are able to send them specifically through geolocation, because the kind of technology we have deployed in terms of drones, it does have artificial intelligence. It's able to do the zooming.
Fantastic.
And that's one of the reasons, by the way, Tessa, why we're able to actually arrest over and above the 6,200 that we deported. We're able to arrest 112 individuals that we call facilitators, and those ones we did not deport them. We actually handed them over to the South African Police Service, and we charged them for aiding and abetting according to Section 49 of the Immigration Act.
And those are facilitators who are operating at the border post itself, people who are not necessarily officials of either one of the governments, but people who are, handlers almost. And this is at the border itself, yeah?
Yeah, you see, Tessa, in terms of the facilitators, there are two groups. There are those that operate outside the port, and these are the people that will make people to cross the borderline. Whether if it's Beitbridge, we talk about crossing Limpopo River. If it is Maseru Bridge, it's crossing the Caledon River. If it is Libombo, crossing through the mountains. So they facilitate people. Most of those are from other countries. They facilitate them in. And then on the South African side, they will interact with the transporters who will try to transport people in. So when we talk about the arrest of this 112, it is covering both foreign nationals as well as South Africans.
Gotcha.
But then there are those that tries to operate inside the port. But those ones we have started to have some bit of an impact on them, because now we no longer allow rovers inside the port. We only allow legitimate travelers. That is why we now have very strong access control into the port, so that only people that are legitimate travelers with legitimate documents are allowed in the port. We have started to reduce that element of corruption in port. That is why we're able to identify the two officials from our side who were attempting to do facilitation, and we got them arrested on the spot in Beitbridge.
No, and congratulations on that work. And I say that because I do understand that this is a very hot topic for many South Africans, but I don't think that we pay enough attention to this side of the work of making sure that we have the right kinds of checks and balances and the right kind of response to the kinds of corruption that would make somebody be able to enter illegally. And again, I want to say to our Power family, let's pay attention to this work. Let's think about what the implications of the work that is being done by this new border management authority is, because we haven't had this kind of setup for as long as you might think. So I think this is a great insight coming here. So thank you so much, Doc, for joining us this morning. That is Dr. Mike Masiapato. He's the commissioner of the Border Management Authority. We really do have South Africa, an immigration crisis in many ways in terms of the way it affects people's lives. But our response cannot just be an emotional one. Our response as a country needs to be a systemic one where we actually understand that the checks and balances are there, and that if people do come in legally, that they're able to be here without fears of getting backlash and xenophobia and all sorts of things, because we know for sure we've done our part to make sure that only people with the right kind of documentation have access into our country. The time now is 6:30. Time for the news at the bottom of the hour with Nompumelelo Ngubeni.